B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our series. We have missed you guys. It's been a long time. Baruch Hashem, as you can see, the technical difficulties don't stop. Yitzhara doesn't stop. And BeEzrat Hashem, we won't stop either. Tonight we're getting back to our Jewish Hashkafa series, which BeEzrat Hashem will continue and get closer and closer to completing it in the very near future, BeEzrat Hashem. We're certainly going to hit a very hot and difficult topic, especially with what's going on in the world today. But just to give you guys a little bit of public announcement, tonight's shiur is going to be is sponsored by Diana Acosta and our family. Kadosh Baruch Hu bless them. Bracha v'atzlacha b'kol ma'aseh yadayim. Shiur is going to be for the refuah shlema for Rabbi Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Talia bat Sarah, Avimori David ben Nesriya, Imimorati Doris bat Jora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides that continue to watch and learn together with us, BeEzrat Hashem, and support our organization as much as they can, BeEzrat Hashem. So, of course, as everybody knows, we have a lot going on in the world. We also have a lot going on in the organization. There's going to be a couple of huge announcements in the very, very near future when it comes to some new releases. We've released a few new things in the last couple of weeks. One of them was the Tikkun HaBrit guide, and also another was the Noahide guide. This is simply a guide unlike any other. It's a interactive guide that's going to help a person if they want to, become moral and stop wasting seed, promiscuity, all of the issues that have to do with morality. This is the guide that literally give you all of the information you can possibly need in order to learn, in order to apply, in order to become holy. In regards to the Noahide guide, this is for all of our dear friends, our non-Jewish friends that love the Torah. To become a righteous Noahide is not an easy task, like some people think. And this is actually some of the things we're going to discuss today. And certainly this is something that needs a little bit of guidance. There's a lot of misguidance, but we need a little bit of guidance. And Baruch Hashem, we came out with that. Both of these things are on our website, BeEzratHashem.org, BeEzratHashem.org. You can get them and download them for free. It's interactive. You press something happens. You press a picture, it opens a video, it opens a book, it opens a lot of different things, which, Baruch Hashem, a lot of work went into it. There's a lot of other really big things coming out, BeEzrat Hashem, in the very near future that are going to shock the world and certainly going to do a lot of good, BeEzrat Hashem, as far as publicizing Torah. Last but not least, for those of you that took advantage of the offer that we made right before the holiday, where you ordered Kiruv books or USBs for free on our Kiruv store, whether it's the new book by Rabbi Ephraim and the Rabbanit that's in English and in Hebrew, both languages are in the same book. You ordered yourself a box of 20 of them, or any of the other books that we have with the USBs. You also got a bunch of books from Rav Nisim again, which Baruch Hashem are, from my perspective and many others, the best books in the English language that have been publicized in recent years. When it comes to MUSSAR, when it comes to Hashkafa, definitely a must-have. It's very hard to get in the United States. We sell the set on our website, but we're not really that good at selling books. We are very good at giving and distributing books for free. So we figured that we'd add these as well. And the offer was taken advantage of by some people, but certainly not enough. There's a lot more people that I know would love to have them. So we're going to continue that offer. And anyone that orders books on the website, on the Kiruv website, that's kiruvstore.org, will also get a second box with some books from Rav Nisim again, BeEzrat Hashem. So that you're not going to see the option of getting those extra books on the website. This is simply for people that actually watch the lectures and want to do Kiruv. That's the second thing. Last but not least, which I know that many of you have been waiting for and asking about, we've had the Tuesday night shiur, for the more than a decade, and then after we completed our last series of Jewish intimacy, which took us over a year. We completed that. We took a break on Tuesday nights for the last couple of months, and now we're glad and very, very excited to announce the next series is going to start on Tuesday night. But this is not going to be a series that perhaps anyone really expected, and certainly no one has ever done. No one has ever done this series because this is a book that is, relatively unknown by our own Rabbeinu v'Morenu, Rav Elchanan Wasserman, who we did a series about one of his books, Ikvita the Meshicha, a very famous book, about 5-6 years ago. And that series, anyone that watches it today will simply think that they're watching the news, because it was literally as if it was a prophecy that was given from Rav Wasserman 80 years ago came true in our life again. And everything he spoke about in that book that we discussed is happening as we speak, with all of the antisemitism, with all of the attacks, the political attacks, the physical attacks, the war, and what's happening in schools right now, and which again, BeEzrat HaShem will discuss a little bit more. So all of that was discussed in that series. What else does Rav Wasserman have to tell us? Well, there is a little unknown kuntris that Rav Wasserman published called Omer Ani Ma'asai Lemelech. And this kuntres is a relatively short book, even shorter than the Rav Elchanan Wasserman book. So the series will probably be somewhere around 20 lectures only. But this is going to tell us about the last war, the war against Amalek, the war against the evil in the world that's going to exist before Mashiach arrives. In so many words, today, if you want to know everything that's going to happen and how to deal with it, not just all the theatrics that we've spoken about many, many times over the years, about the big war, 2/3 of the world dying, and all that stuff. I'm talking about all of the ideological wars, all of the different issues that will happen right before Mashiach gets here, and what you're going to need to know in order to identify where you stand, to identify the enemy. All of it was already written by Rav Elchanan Wasserman over 80 years ago. And this is what we're going to be discussing, BeEzrat HaShem, in the series starting on Tuesday. For anyone that wants to sponsor individual lectures, they can go to the website, BeEzratHashem.org. Anyone that wants to sponsor the entire series, as I said, it's only going to be a 20-lecture series. You're more than welcome to contact me, and BeEzrat HaShem, we can discuss that further. But either way, the series is going to take place on Tuesday nights. It's certainly going to be like a continuation of the Era of Mashiach series, but with some new bits of information that, like I said, it's going to seem like you're watching the news of the modern day as well as the future, but not the distant future, rather the very near future. BeEzrat HaShem, as a Kadosh Baruch Hu brings the ultimate salvation closer. So, with that being said, we have our Jewish Hashkafa series coming closer and closer to an end. We are in the last few pages of the famous Sefer Emunah and Bitachon by the Chazon Ish, and we're in the 6th chapter that's called Nevuah, prophecy. And the big question that we're going to answer today through this teachings of the Chazon Ish is a question that perhaps many people have asked, and certainly many more are asking as we speak, when we see the world transform what seems like overnight, but really the makings of a couple of decades worth of horrific work by the leaders of all kinds. And the culmination of all of that is what's happening in the schools today, whether it's the protests in every single major college in the United States, where you have literally people, young people and older people, protesting for the benefit of Hamas, for the benefit of the people that murdered thousands of Jews and vowed to do it again. But they call it Free Palestine. They call it all types of other things that make it seem like it's not what it really is. And you're seeing young Americans that have probably never even don't even know how to point the Middle East, needless to say, the Israel or Gaza or Palestine or even Jordan on the map if you paid them $1,000 for it without using Google. And they are vowing themselves their allegiance to the Palestinians. The Palestinians that they apparently decided to hold dear since the war began. We're not talking about the Muslims that obviously have been fighting this war since the beginning of their religion, 1400 years ago. The war between the Jews and the Ishmael is thousands of years old. The war between the religions is 1400 years old, and certainly there's never going to be a peace until Mashiach comes. Anyone that thinks otherwise is simply a fool, a naive person, or crazy. But the war between the two nations is simply a war. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that all are good or all are bad on either side, but certainly the war is the war, and the war will continue. The issue is not really with the people that, for better or for worse, have something to stand on. Meaning that if you are a Muslim that believes that this is your land and the Jews stole it from you, and despite the fact that you're wrong, and history obviously and archaeology and even your own book says otherwise, but nonetheless, let's just say you have an argument. At the very least, those types of people have something to fight for. Why? This is part of their culture. This is part of their belief system. But what does young Samantha from North Dakota that happens to attend Columbia University doing in the same protest when she never even went there? Doesn't know anything about it. And in fact, when those very same Palestinian Muslims that she's supporting actually find out what she decides to do with her gender and all of the ideologies that she holds dear to herself as well, she doesn't realize she becomes a bigger enemy than Israel. But, the Americans, unfortunately, suffer from ignorance in a very high extent in this generation. And this is not necessarily a surprise to any of you. But the point being is that if somebody is a Muslim that's fighting for a cause, whether right or wrong, you understand it. If it's an Israeli, a Jew that's fighting for a cause, you can understand it. But when you have a bunch of people that are clueless about what they're even fighting for, and even they themselves have been caught saying on camera, without any shame whatsoever, that they have no idea why they're even protesting. They're just there to protest free, 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 free. And now they want the government and the schools and everybody else to give them stuff for free. This reminds me of what happened about 25 years ago when I was still on Wall Street and there was a bunch of degenerates screaming about the 99% and the 1% and how the rich people are unfair and the lower 1%, the lower 99% are being taken advantage of. Interestingly enough, when people actually started interviewing some of these protesters, they found out that many of them were rich kids. They were complaining about their own parents. Like literally the level of stupidity reached new highs in those days. And we thought, naively though, we were even convinced when we saw them that we're never going to see this level of stupidity again. And that in itself was probably stupid to think. Because one of the things that science has confirmed and history has gone along with it, is that stupidity could always be surpassed. You could always find stupider people. And Baruch Hashem, look, we found them. Millions of them. Millions of them are literally protesting their hearts out for a belief system that's contrary to their lifestyle. A belief system that would actually destroy them, even before they would go after the Jews. But needless to say, let's not allow the facts get in the way of a good story. If that wasn't bad enough, you also have the school systems not only allowing this to happen, but actually supporting it. Supporting it in such a fashion that just in the last couple of days, I only got news of this today, that one of the major universities in the East Coast, Rutgers University, signed a deal with the protesters. They actually signed a deal with renegades. They signed a deal with people that want to destroy the system. This is like signing a deal with terrorists. But nobody thinks there's anything wrong with this, apparently, in the school system, the so-called higher education system. They signed a deal with them that they're going to hire some Palestinian and Muslim experts as professors, that they are going to bring 10 people from Gaza on scholarship. Now, had they actually gone to Gaza, or even the West Bank, in fact, even if they would have gone to one of the buildings being built somewhere in Israel that's mostly Arab builders, I'm not sure if they would want those scholarships to be given, to be honest with you. But don't worry. You don't have to believe me. Those Gazans are coming. Welcome. Welcome, Mr. Gaza. Come to our university. Come to our university and teach us your culture. Oh, and by the way, you have to accept everyone. LGB, TQ, this Q, that Q, all the Qs. Accept us as we are, just like we accept you as you are. And guess what? I don't believe the Gaza scholarship fellow is going to agree. I don't think he's going to agree. That's just a hunch. Just a hunch. Just a hunch. But I'm just warning you, young scholars in the universities and the professors, if you start seeing Mr. Gaza start screaming in the name of God, la 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 la, run. He's not agreeing. He's not dancing for your cause. He's not dancing. He's not dancing. Once he starts saying the name of God out loud, he's not dancing religion. He's not dancing university. He's not dancing that. I promise you. You want to wait? Go ahead. Just make sure somebody has a camera that you could post on YouTube or TikTok. TikTok is good with this stuff. Make sure somebody's recording this. Once he says, Allahu Akbar! Oh, run! Mr. LG, Mr. BQ, Mr. GQ, all Qs, run. He's not agreeing. He's not agreeing. Allahu Akbar does not mean. He is accepting your belief. But what about the fact that you welcomed them with open arms and Mr. Gaza, please come, we're going to pay for your scholarship. You should. Alain Olagasi, why not? Sure, we be friends. As soon as he comes, if he starts saying Allahu Akbar, I'm not going to say what's going to happen. I'm not going to say it because they're going to shut me down. But I'm just giving you, a warning to be nice. It's always good to listen to a Jewish warning. We know what we're talking about. We know what we're talking about, even though We're not in your university. We know what we're talking about. Allahu Akbar does not mean he's accepting of your pink hair. No. Pink hair, Allahu Akbar does not mean that. No, 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 no. Oh, by the way, the ladies also. Ladies cover their hair, their face, everything. She comes. She starts saying Allahu Akbar. She doesn't want to be a friend. Does not want to be a friend. And she does not remember the fact that you paid for the scholarship. In fact, she doesn't care. But invite them. Go ahead, Rutgers University. Go. You're doing great. You are a safe school. Now, Rabotai Karim, with all joking aside, this is an indication of the future. On Wall Street, nearly 2 decades, we said a famous statement in every single conversation or piece of paper that a client signed or reviewed. Past performance is not an indication of future results. Meaning, if somebody did good in the past, it's not necessarily an indication that they will do good in investments in the future. Here, on the other hand, it doesn't apply. In fact, the opposite applies. You see, Rabotai, past performance is an indication of future results. And in fact, one of the things that we are seeing here is that when the so-called leadership of universities, the ultimate scholars, decide that you have to negotiate with a bunch of terrorists, clueless young kids, who if you would not give them instructions would not even know how to put their pants on, if you're taking deals and making deals with them, that means that every school will most likely do the same thing, whether it's Columbia or Harvard, Yale, or whoever else it is. And we've said this before, but it's always worth to say it again. Colleges are not what they used to be. You used to actually learn in college. Today, you party. You make sins. You go against God. You have a bunch of relationships that you regret. You do a bunch of stupid things. And but your parents pay for it, and today they pay $50,000, $100,000 a year, if not more. Now, if that's not bad enough, for the Jewish people, going to college, if you want to be religious, is simply not possible if you're going to attend the campus and expect not to sin for 4 years. It's just not possible. I went to college. I know what goes on there. I wasn't always like this. And nothing has improved since I was there 20 years ago. More. Now, you see, college is Sodom and Gomorrah. Everybody knows, including the professors who are sometimes involved. And if that wasn't bad enough for the Jewish people, where they would spiritually murder their kids by allowing them to go to these colleges, regardless of even if they call themselves a religious college, like a YESHIVA university type. It's all the same. Once you go, you are in essence indoctrinating your kids. You're in essence allowing your kids to simply do what they feel is best. Now, the problem with that is a kid that goes from being in the yeshiva system, in a religious household, in a religious upbringing that is reserved and conservative, now being allowed to go on the loose in the place of the highest level of promiscuity on planet Earth, regardless of which college it is. It's like throwing a fish, little tiny cute little fish, delicious fish, into a pool of piranhas and expecting it to survive without even a scratch. Now, we've said this, spiritually speaking, it's always been a bad place. But now we have even better news. With the new Free Palestine campaigns happening in every college and the new agreements that are happening now, as we saw with Rutgers University, apparently it's not only going to be a spiritual problem anymore, you're also going to have, perhaps, we're just guessing, an educated guess. You're going to have a little bit, let's just say, unsafe for the body types of areas. Perhaps, you send a kid to the army, he may be safer than sending him to these universities, because at least in the army he has a weapon. So with that being said, and of course, as frustrating as it is, this is the reality we all face. The question is, are Goyim, which is the nations, inherently evil? That's the question. Because of course, at a time of animosity towards the Jews running rampant, as every time we've seen throughout all of history, without fail, whether it was through the times of the Bet HaMikdash, the Spanish Inquisition, the pogroms of the 1600s with the Crusades, or Nazi Germany, or the different things that happened in England in the 1100s, all of those times were times where propaganda against the Jews was the number one bestseller in the world of anti-Semites. And they would typically use different parts of the Talmud that they would misinterpret intentionally and unintentionally, take things out of character, and simply say that the Jews are inherently bad and are the enemy because they believe that the Goyim are inherently evil. Now, one of the things people that are stupid usually assume is that just the fact that you call the nations, the Gentiles, Goyim, already shows that you think we're evil. Now that's stupid. Why is it stupid? Simple. Because Goyim does not mean bad non-Jews. Goyim means nations. And in fact, even the Jewish people are called Goyim in the Torah. And God says, you're going to be a Goy Kadosh. You're going to be a Goy Kadosh. What's a Goy Kadosh? A holy nation. Goyim does not mean bad. It just means nation in biblical language. But of course, when you're uneducated and your best professors are recruiting terrorists, Gaza people from, in the middle of a war to be professors, not professors, students, scholarship students, or both actually, they must know. So anyway, what do the Jews think about the Goyim? What do the Jews think about the Goyim? In fact, this is what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to address this issue. And BeEzrat HaShem, have an answer. Now, don't expect this to be politically correct. For anyone that's watched my lectures over the years, if you're expecting political correctness, you've hit the wrong address. That you could expect in the university. Columbia, Harvard, Yale, one of these places. Here, you're going to get sources that you could read yourself if you'd like to look deeper. So now, Rabotai, the Chazon Ish writes this book, and in the 6th chapter he talks about prophecy, but unlike what some people would expect, so he's given us the instructions of how to be a prophet, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to become the next Moshe Rabbeinu. No, it doesn't work that way. First, he's telling you that it requires a cleansing process, a spiritual cleansing process, which begins with education, then is followed by actions. But more than anything else, a person has to have the deep, real relationship with their Creator. If you deny the Creator, that obviously means that there is no relationship between you and the Creator that's of any value. But in the first section of the 6th chapter of prophecy, the Chazon Ish told us that the secret to existence to the world's existence is that Hashem's presence fills the entire world. And from the reality of Hashem's being stems the very existence of the world. He causes everything to be every moment, and His will, so to speak, is contained in every material object, both under the sun and above it. In so many words, en od milvado, there's nothing else but God. Now, contrary to people's beliefs, ideologies, or just simple thought process that they are alone in the world because they're depressed, they're alone in the world because they've succeeded, they're alone in the world because they don't see God, there is no such thing. En od milvado, God is in everything. If you're not seeing it, it's because you're not paying attention. Now, we've discussed this further in other lectures, so we're not going to delve into it too far. But now, in the second section, the Chazon Ish is telling us as follows. A prophetic connection between the Creator and His creations is one of the foundations of the creation of the world. In so many words, he's telling us that prophecy was already something that God instilled into the world, into first human being, Adam HaRishon, the first man. Such was Hashem's plan to create man, to grant him wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, as well as the ability to hear the prophetic words of the Creator. The plan initially was that God would create man, and man would remain holy and loyal to his Creator and be able to speak to God as if you are speaking to each other. He was supposed to receive the instructions of what to do and what not to do directly from the Creator. At least that was if Adam HaRishon would actually have stayed loyal to God like he was supposed to. For the purpose of man is his being created with two inclinations, the good and the bad inclination, meaning that a natural inclination towards that which is immediately pleasurable, and also a desire that comes from the intellect for wisdom, acts of kindness, and other good deeds. Hashem's will was that man would scorn evil and choose good. But not all of good can be known by way of intellect. Rather, rooted in man is the ability to choose to do good, to the point that the person will be capable of achieving prophecy. And then Hashem will command him regarding what is forbidden and should therefore be refrained from, and the good deeds that he is obligated to do. Here the Chazon Ish is telling us the way that man was originally created was just like you are created until this day. You have a good inclination and an evil inclination. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, everyone has these two inclinations. One is an inclination that is in line with the will of God, and one is opposing the will of God. Being in a path that's following the will of God, of good, of wisdom, of charitable, of knowledge, of good things, that's going in the right path. That's called good. Because the Creator of good defined good that way. On the other hand, going the opposite way, opposing the will of God, and doing something that is the opposite of what the will of God is called evil. Why? Because the one that created evil defined evil as such. But what about if your definition doesn't agree with his definition? Your definition of evil is such, and God's definition is different. Well, guess what? No one cares about your definition. Certainly not God. Why? He is the one that created you, and therefore, he's the only one that can tell you what good is and what bad is, what evil is. Now, the way that a person that has these inclination would think initially is that, oh, so if I was programmed to think good and bad, then it should be pretty simple. But the answer is no. Why? Because even though you are inclined to do good, you don't know the definition of all good by yourself. As he says, rooted in him is the ability to choose to do good, but it is limited because he doesn't know all of the good that is available until he acquires a certain level of knowledge, a divine knowledge that will show him good, that is not necessarily common sense. Many times when people ask questions about God, if they're studious and they've asked some of the other questions, eventually they get to the ultimate question, which is, why is it that good people suffer? Why is it that God, the ultimate good, allows people to die, people to suffer, people to be poor? Now, a Torah scholar is not going to ask that question because that question is very, very simple. It's something that you even teach children. But a person that didn't learn Torah from Torah scholars will have that question even when he's 70 years old. Because his definition of good is limited to what makes sense to him. He sees that if somebody has money, that means good. If somebody has property, that means good. If somebody has all types of things, if he lives a long time, that means good. But the reality is, if he sees war, he says that's bad. If he sees death, he says that's bad. If he sees suffering, he also sees that's bad. And there lies his limit. Because he defines good based on his own perspective, the limited human perspective. To simply show that that's wrong in a very simple way is that, yes, if a person has money, you may define it as good, but what if that person is a terrorist and he has money now to buy weapons? What if that person is a evil person that wants to do evil with the money, hurt people? Is it still good that he has money? Is it still good that he has a lot of property? Is it still good that he has power? Oh, but no, I didn't mean that way. I meant if I have good. Oh, so no, we're talking about the human definition of good. So obviously, if someone has property or a long life or any type of thing that you view as good for you is not necessarily the same definition as everybody else. The same goes otherwise. War is not necessarily always bad. What if the war is destroying evil? Is it still bad? What if the suffering that a person has is removing any type of longer term suffering that they will have had they not had the suffering? Because life doesn't end here. There's an eternity. There's a life after life. And if a person knew the value of suffering in this world, our Jewish sages teach us that they would literally pray for suffering, because they would know that any suffering you have in this world, whether it's something as big and horrible as a disease and pain and agony, or something as small as reaching into your pocket to grab a coin but grabbing the wrong one, all suffering is to your benefit because it removes much greater suffering that a person deserves for their sins while they're in this world. So if you knew that your loss of money in this world that caused you suffering is replacing 1,000 years of Gehinnom, you would say, God, take all the money, not just the money you took. But because your perspective, your human perspective, does not know all of these things, You assume that all war is bad, all death is bad, all suffering is bad, all possessions is good, all marriage is good, all all of the things that you want for yourself are good, but in reality it's not. So the Chazon Ish is telling us is that while a person inherently has the inclination of good and the inclination of bad, he does not have a full knowledge of what good is and what bad is. And in order to get the true and clear, real picture of what is good, ultimately, based on the bigger picture, we were supposed to get it through prophecy. Where Hashem would tell him, listen, you see that person that guy's beating up, and you want to go save him and put your life at risk? Don't do it. Why, God? Look, he's getting beat up. He just punched him in the face. Look, he's going to kill him. I know. I'm letting him kill him. Why, God? Poor guy. He's not a poor guy. That guy's a pedophile. What? Yeah, that guy did a lot of horrible things. Oh, wow, I didn't know. Wow, I didn't know. Oh, look at that guy. Look, that guy just got a brand new car. And he got a new house. And he looks so happy. And why? Why did he get so much? Doesn't look like he's good. You're right. He's not good. He's terrible. Wait, that makes even less sense. So why are you giving him the house? Why are you giving him all this stuff? That's because he's so terrible. I don't want to see him in heaven, ever. So I'm giving him any reward that he's entitled to in this world. Because once he leaves this world, all he's going to have is suffering. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, wow, that guy, look, he's so poor. He must be a bad guy. Must be terrible. Look, his pants have holes in them. His kids look like they haven't eaten in 2 or 3 days. That's terrible. Oh, you must be like an evil person. No. That guy is a tzaddik. That guy's really righteous. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. So why is he suffering? That's because he doesn't want to enjoy this world. He wants to learn Torah and simply get the minimum of what's required to live, because he wants to save all of his merits for an eternity. And I'll give you a little peek at his eternity. He's right next door to the greatest sages, the most righteous people that ever lived, that will only have good, will be like kings on thrones in heaven. Wow, I didn't know. So when a person has this limited perspective, everything looks like it doesn't make sense. This guy won, that guy lost, this guy lived, that guy died. The way we were supposed to get all of these insights was through prophecy. Prophecy was supposed to give us the ultimate picture. And the Chazon Ish continues and says, when Adam was created, he was created with power of prophecy. Then he was prophetically commanded to observe 7 negative mitzvot, the 7 Noahide laws. That is, 7 things that in refraining from them, man is refraining from evil. And other mitzvot that are positive ones, to be done actively. See, here, our holy sages are giving us one of the most profound statements that any person could ever know. What are the 7 Noahide laws? Why did God give Adam HaRishon, and thereby Noach, and thereby all of mankind, the 7 Noahide laws? And then at Mount Sinai, he added to those, and he gave that Torah many more laws, and he gave that to the chosen people that chose the Torah, the Jewish people. But why give those laws? What's so special about them? Very simple. Says the Chazon Ish, by following those laws, man is assured that he's going to refrain from evil. If he follows the 7 Noahide laws, he will not be evil. Simple. Now this, Rabotai, gives us a whole new perspective of what's going on in the world today. Because now, you don't have to ask the Jewish people of what's the Jewish perspective on the non-Jews, but rather, you could ask God, what do you think of us, Goyim? Are we good or are we evil? Because despite what your belief system is, whether it is Judaism, Islam, Christianity, all believe in the Old Testament. Now, obviously, from a Jewish perspective, the New Testament is idolatry, false man-made idolatry. And the Quran is also heresy. And some believe idolatry as well. But that doesn't matter anymore at this point. Because it doesn't matter what the Jews believe about what the New Testament says or what the Quran says. Because the Quran itself says if you want to know the truth, go to the people of the book, go to the Old Testament, go to the Torah. And even if they want to dispute us about how the Cave of Machpelah or really all of the things that Avraham gave to Yitzchak, he really gave it to Ishmael. We'll put that aside for a second. The Torah, everyone knows, starts with Adam HaRishon. Adam lives his life almost 1,000 years, 930 years. The next extraordinary person that's written in the Torah about is Noach. The world is destroyed at the time of Noach because of all the sodomy and all of the things that are forbidden according to the definition of God. And the Noahide laws continue for over 2,000 years, 2,400 years, before the Torah is given to Am Yisrael. In the Christian world, if you ask a Christian what was true before the New Testament, they'll tell you the Torah. Their belief system is that the New Testament continued it. Obviously, we disagree. But the point being is that it doesn't matter anymore. Every New Testament contains the Old Testament, which is what we call the Torah, at least the written Torah. In their written Torah, it's the same thing as ours. They have the 7 Noahide laws. Everyone knows the 7 Noahide laws. They were given to man in order to help you refrain from evil. The Creator revealed, says the Chazon Ish, the Creator revealed to Adam the truth of the secret of the world. That there is a hidden Creator who created the entire world, heaven and earth, and all that they contain. But by the reality of his existence and his providence is constant upon all that was created. And this Creator commanded him to beware of even thinking of solutions other than the truth. And beware of conjuring up various forms of idolatry, avodah zarah, directed at the heavenly host or other false powers. These were part of the rules. He was also commanded to observe other practical mitzvot, such as not to steal, not to shed blood, not to commit incest, not to eat meat from an animal that's still alive. In so many words, God told Adam HaRishon and all of mankind the rules of evil. If you do this, you're evil. Simple. So now, Rabotai Yekarim, we have to look at where we stand. Where we stand when it comes to evil in the world. The 7 Noahide laws are as follows. Forbidden idolatry. Idolatry, regardless of what form it is, whether it's ancient or modern, whether it's some type of heavenly sphere, or a spirit, or a human, or a possession. Any form of idolatry is forbidden. Cursing the divine name, cursing God, forbidden. Murder, forbidden. Immorality, all types of sexual transgressions, forbidden. Theft, forbidden. Must have a court system. Meaning, you can't decide to redefine the laws because there's a bunch of protests outside of your campus that you allowed in. You have to have a court system. And last but not least, eating a limb from a live animal. These are the 7 Noahide laws. Now, if you look at the world today, you're not going to be so happy about where things stand. Why? When it comes to idolatry, this is one of the things that God detests more than anything else, because you're replacing the creator of everything with a creation. You're replacing the ultimate everything with something that's less than nothing. So idolatry is clearly something that many people fall for. Sometimes they make a human being into an idol. Sometimes they make money their idol, as they chase it, as they live for it, as they praise it, as they simply make their whole life only about it. The only intellectual conversation they could possibly have is about all types of economic statistics that they memorized or have read in the paper that morning and pretend like they memorized. If you ask them about anything else of substance, they don't have much to say. They don't care enough. Until the money loses its value. Not because they lost the money, but simply they start realizing that there's more to life than just money. There's more to life than just possessions. But people turn money into idolatry, both Jews and non-Jews alike, sometimes. Sometimes people turn people into idolatry, where they decide that a person became God somehow. Now, if that's not bad enough, we have people that don't understand what it is to be a good person, but they decided that they know more about the creation than the creator itself, and when the creation doesn't function according to their likings, they start cursing out the creator. Many times people use it to such an extent that they even use it in their day-to-day language, just the way that they speak. These are things that happen all the time. murder. Now, of course, I don't have to tell you about all the horrible things that are happening in neighborhoods that have a bunch of degenerates running it, either because it's a lawless place or because the law is so flawed that the people that are supposed to institute and apply the law are more corrupt than the civilians they're supposed to protect. If you look at different places around the US and different countries, murder happens every day. Sometimes people shoot each other just because he took his parking spot. Other times because he took his girlfriend. The value of life is deteriorated to such an extent that people think that life is like a video game. But if that's not bad enough, you even have leaders, religious leaders, such as the ones that are promoting all of this terrorism, telling people that their way to win is by killing Jews. Their way to win is by drowning all the Jews from the river to the sea. To such an extent that the people follow and massacre thousands upon thousands of people they never knew, people they never met, people that don't even have the ability to protect themselves. And the ideology of the world has become so upside down that when the victim starts defending themselves, somehow the victim becomes the enemy. Sometimes you're baffled at the level of corruption that's happening in society, but other times you just simply say this is literally a lost cause. Now, stealing, this is something that literally, if you haven't stolen, maybe it's because you don't have hands. So many people steal from their bosses, from their customers, from the government, to such an extent that they've redefined stealing in a positive way in society. They call it hustling. Like, if you beat the man, you deserve what you got. Like Robin Hood became a good guy because he stole from the people that have a lot. Somehow, it's okay to steal from rich people or rich entities. Somehow, the bad guy became a good guy. The villain became a good guy. This is what they teach kids, even from the time I was a kid. Stealing has become standard. People that want something, they just simply take it now. When I was a kid, if somebody stole, usually they'd hide. They'd go into a store, take something, put it in their pocket, and sneak out before somebody caught them. I used to work in retail stores as a kid. And we'd see different guys would stand in the corner next to some shirt or pants or whatever it was for a while. And as soon as any one of the salespeople got close to him, they would run away. Like, what happened? You don't want the pants? You don't want the shirt? And then you start seeing, they were trying to take out the security mechanism that's attached to it with a rubber band. They take a rubber band and just take it around the nail over and over again. Little by little, it would release the security clip on there. And then they could just walk out of the door with the pants or shirt or whatever it was without the beeping, without them getting caught. But at the very least, back then, at least there was some type of process. People were ashamed to steal. People were scared to steal. Today, look what's happening in America. People literally are going into stores in groups and mobs in open daylight, smashing all the windows, smashing all the displays, taking the phones, taking the shoes, taking the clothes, taking the groceries, taking whatever is there. And literally, without even running out, they're just gathering thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff and just walking out, and nobody does anything about it. No one can do anything about it. If you call the police, the company will fire the employee that called the police. Stealing has become acceptable in society. The sages teach us that when the Torah says in Parashat Noach, and the entire world was full of Hamas, it wasn't talking about the terrorists of today, perhaps prophesizing about them, but wasn't back then. The whole land was full of Hamas. The whole land was full of stealing. Stealing became acceptable behavior. Court system. A court system is a court system that's supposed to protect society. But when you have a person that kills somebody get a sentence of 5 years or 10 years in prison, while a person that stole money from a bunch of investors go to jail for 25 years, become the norm, it's very clear there's something wrong with this legal system. When you have somebody that steals under $1,000 released without any warning, without anything, because it's less than $1,000, even if he and a bunch of other people did it at the same time, you realize that there's something wrong with the legal system. When you look at the legal system in the world today, aside from the lawyers that continue making a fortune losing cases, no one else is happy with the legal system. We have a case where one woman and one man, two completely different cases, two different parts of the world. In one case, a man decided one day he doesn't want to live with his wife anymore. So he took the infant, 6-month-old baby that was still breastfeeding, and left the country. Now, it's very easy to find where he was. Very easy to find where he was. After I told you, listen, the guy just took the kid, it's kidnapping. Yeah, but it's his kid. Yeah, but he's not the only parent. So you should assume that the legal system would force him to come back and figure out a way that they can live in harmony. He can get a house down the street or in a different place, neighborhood, but they could have some type of custody. 3.5 years later, the legal system has still not succeeded in having this guy return the baby. Even though they proved that he took the baby illegally, that he did things that are illegal. But no, if this was the only case, you say, oh, it's an anomaly. Bad legal system in a certain place. No. Another case, a woman decides, even though we just got married a year ago, I don't want to be married anymore. Why? I want to hang out with my friends. Okay, you don't want to be married. Fine, we have a kid together. No. She decides she's going to take the kid and leave town. it's very nice that you don't want to be a wife anymore, but you can't just leave town. I want to see my kid. No, if you want to come, you have to fly in a plane to come see the kid. But that's not what we agreed to when we were married. Too bad. You would think the legal system put both of these parties in the same courtroom, and the lawyers would say, listen, obviously they were married. Obviously they had a baby together. Obviously they agreed to raise this baby together. It didn't work out. That happens. But you can't just decide, listen, because I don't like it, I'm just going to leave and I'm taking the kid with me, and too bad for you. Doesn't work that way. Well, guess what? That's what's happening right now in America. And I wish this was the only two cases. Now I'm remembering there's another case. Another woman decided that she doesn't like the husband anymore. She liked his friend. He was more handsome. So she decided to leave with the kid. And guess what? Not only did she take the kid, but somehow she convinced the legal system to put a restraining order on the husband to not be able to see the kid, even though he never did anything wrong. This is the legal system we have. Now, if any of these people were politically connected, multimillionaires, the legal system changes. Legal system changes. So you see that the legal system inherently is not exactly the legal system that God told us that the non-Jews have to have. The Jews have their legal system, which is the rules of the Torah. The non-Jews are supposed to have a legal system that is civil. If this is what civil is, what's uncivilized? Now, eating a limb from a torn animal, this happens in certain parts of the world, but not quite as often as some of these other crimes. But I intentionally left the last one, which is the sexual transgressions, to last. And our word in our parasha this week, Parashat Kedushim, the book of Leviticus, chapter 20, God tells us that these rules also apply to the Jewish people. In fact, he gives us details of who and what is allowed and who and what is not allowed. And he tells us about the punishment that we'll be able to institute at the time of Moses, time of Moshe Rabbeinu. If someone was an idol worshiper, Jew or Gentile, they would get a death penalty. This obviously is not applicable today. Not that it's not applicable. Torah is still relevant, but the death penalty is divine now. It's not, there's no Sanhedrin that could apply these penalties. But nonetheless, God tells us clearly that someone that serves an idol loses their right to live. And there's different types of idols. There's the typical idol that people know, statues, people, and so on. But there's also sorcery, witchcraft, ovot, idonim. There's some people that do all types of spiritual things. There's some people that put a bone in the mouth of a animal, or under the armpit. Some people are able to influence animals and have, in so many words, influence the animals to do whatever they want. It's another form of idolatry. There's all types of idolatries, many, many more than most people realize exist, especially in Western society today. All of these things are forbidden. All of these things God decreed are evil. But then he goes into the morality laws. He talks about how all of these different things are forbidden. Adultery is forbidden both for Jews and Gentiles. LGBTQ, forbidden for every one of mankind. Bestiality, forbidden for all of mankind. Now already here, most people have a problem. Especially the protesters. Especially the people that are not educated about what's good and what's evil. They no longer have to ask the Jews what the Jews think of them. In fact, even the Jews don't have to ask, what do other Jews think of them? Because who cares about what another person thinks of you if God already decreed something? The Rambam clarifies in Ilchot Melachim, the Noahide laws. These are laws that apply to all of mankind. He says in chapter 8, Halakha number 10, that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, only gave the Torah and the mitzvot as an inheritance to Am Yisrael, as the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33, verse 4 says that the Torah is the inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov, which is referring, Yaakov is Israel, and all those who desire to convert from among the other nations. The book of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 15 says, the convert shall be the same as you. However, someone who does not desire to accept the Torah and the mitzvot should not be forced to. Seems pretty reasonable. But that doesn't mean they can just do whatever they want. Rather, he says, by the same regard, Moses was commanded by the Almighty to compel all of the inhabitants of the world to accept the commandments given to Noah's descendants, the 7 Noahide laws. And one who does not accept these commandments should be executed. That was what was applicable at the time, 3,335 years ago. The 7 Noahide laws were something that Moshe Rabbeinu had to enforce on all of mankind. Not an option. Just like the Jews did not have an option of whether to keep Shabbat or not, because if they decided to desecrate Shabbat, they had to suffer the consequence. Same concept if it was a non-Jew. And then he continues in Halakha number 11, he says, anyone who accepts upon himself the fulfillment of these 7 mitzvot, 7 Noahide laws, and is precise in their observance, is considered one of the pious among the nations, and will merit a share in the world to come. This applies only when he accepts them and fulfills them, because the Holy One, blessed is He, commanded them in the Torah, and informed us through Moshe our teacher, that Noah's descendants have been commanded to fulfill them previously. However, if this Gentile fulfills them out of intellectual conviction, meaning he just thinks it's a good idea not to kill people. He just thinks it's a good idea not to steal. Then he's not considered a resident alien, nor is he considered among the pious among the Gentiles, nor of their wise men. So here we see that observing the 7 Noahide laws is not just because it makes sense to you not to kill people. Rather, it has to be specifically because you're listening to the Creator. Because He is the one that instituted them, decreed them, and also defined good and evil. Furthermore, the Rambam repeats what the 7 Noahide laws are, like I said before. prohibition against worshiping false gods, prohibition against cursing God, prohibition against murder, prohibition against incest and adultery, prohibition against theft, establishing a court system. And lastly, not to eat the flesh of something that's alive. Now, to give some clarification of what these mean so people understand, if someone worships a false god, he's liable. And even though Moshe Rabbeinu is not here today, God is always here. And therefore, the punishment comes at some point or another, whether it's in this world or the next. Now, some people think, come on, no, there's plenty of bad people. They're alive, they're well. But they don't realize life is long. It's not short. People think life is short, but it's not. If you calculate how much you've done in the last 5 years, simply think about it, you'd realize how long life is. So much can be done. So much can change. What you did 10 years ago versus what you did 5 years ago versus what you did in the last year. It's almost as if you've transformed multiple times in a single decade. And this applies to most people. What you will do over the next 5 years is much more than what you've done in the last 10 years, especially if you're young. When a young person looks at their life, they're 17, 18, 20 years old, they think, wow, they think they know everything. Look how much I did in my young age. But then by the time they get to 25, they realize how much they did between the last 5 years. And it made the first 20 years seem like they were nothing. And then they realize, wow, the next 5 years, by the time they get to 30, it looks like everything they've done in the first 25 years was nothing. And by the time you get to 40 years old, you realize how stupid you were for the first 25 years to actually think you know what you're doing. And people only realize how long life is as they go through it. And as long as you realize how long life is, let's give you a story. The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 82a. The Gemara is also called the Talmud. The very same Talmud that people like to hate, even though they've never read even a single page out of it and understood it. There are different types of teachings in the Talmud. Some are laws, some are stories, experiences, facts that have to do with science, have to do with biology. All 7 levels of wisdom are in the Talmud. And here in the Talmud, in the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, Tractate of Sanhedrin, page 82a, is a story, or historical story that has to do with the Tanakh. There was a evil king named Yoyakim. He was the third to last king of the Jewish people at the time of the Beit HaMikdash. When the prophet Jeremiah came to him and showed him a prophecy that the Beit HaMikdash will be destroyed, that he's going to be punished, and so on, he got so angry he ripped it. And that's when Hashem decided that he will not have a normal burial. He will die an awful death and will not have a normal burial. And you think, no, come on, it's just a story. Fast forward. Many, many centuries later, the Gemara reports that Rabbi Chia bar Avuya one day is walking and sees that there's a skull on the ground. A human skull on the ground. and he wants to respect the dead, whoever the dead is. He gets closer to it to see if it's connected to anything, if it has any type of writing, anything connected to it. And he sees that on the skull itself, it's engraved. That this and still another. That's what's engraved on it. This and still another. Rabbi Yehudah says, this must be the skull of Yoyakim, because the prophecy against him was that he's not going to be buried in a normal fashion. And here you see his skull is here, so it must be him. He makes a hole and he buries it. The next day, he goes through the same path and he sees that the skull came out of the ground. He sees the skull came out of the ground. So, he tries again. He buries this skull that says this and then another. And the next day, he passes by and he sees the skull has been rejected by the ground that spit it out again. And he realizes this is a serious problem. So he takes the skull, he gets some type of fabric, he covers it, and he brings it to the house with an intention to bring it to the sages, to the other sages, to see what to do with this. He leaves the house for a little while, and his wife sees that there's this new thing in the house. She opens it up, and she sees a skull. She goes and she tells her friends, "Why did my husband bring a skull to the house?" Her friend said, "You know what? It's probably the skull of his ex-wife. His wife that died, not ex-wife, his wife that died. He probably misses her." His wife said, "Huh?" She goes into the house, she takes the skull, and she throws it into the oven to completely destroy it. When Rabbi Yehudah bar Avuya comes back to the house, he looks for the skull, says, "My dear wife, where's the little basket that I brought?" He says, "The skull of your ex-wife. I got it. It's burning." She's like, it wasn't the ex-wife. It wasn't my past wife, my first wife. No. This was the skull of Yoyakim. That was an evil person, and now I understand what God wrote. He said this and then another, meaning you're not only going to suffer not having a normal burial ground for all this time, but eventually you'll get an additional suffering where the bones are going to be burned. In so many words, the length of life is much longer than you can possibly imagine when it comes to the perspective of God. Meaning, as much as a person thinks of how much he or she achieved in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, in the last 50 years, however much it is, and I start realizing, wow, a lot went on. I did this, and I went there, and I did this, and I did that. And you think, wow, I guess I did live. I did a lot of things. As long as you think that is, it's still nothing in comparison to how much time Hashem has in order to administer His decrees. If He says, this is not allowed, and if you go against it, this is considered evil, you'll get a punishment. You may not think, oh yeah, well, you know what? I went against it and nothing happened. I stole some money and nothing happened. And guess what? In time, which Hashem has an endless supply of, you'll see how things turn. Just recently, I heard that somebody that I knew as a young person, always a loser person that never wanted to do things the way they were supposed to. always had a way, always had a thing, always had a chip on his shoulder. Wasn't exactly the nicest person, but never had, he's like one of those types of arrogant people that doesn't have anything to be arrogant about. Well, anyway, apparently some people a few years ago told me he struck gold. He struck gold, he did this, he did that, made millions of dollars. I said, Mabruk, chavod. He's like, yeah, but since he did that, he's even nastier than he used to be. I said, that's not really a surprise. You know, if you want to get to know somebody, as I say in my personal story film, you want to get to know somebody, put a bunch of money in front of them and you'll see them mutate into who they really are. So in this case, this person wasn't exactly peaches to begin with. He just became much worse. He became rotten peaches after he had a bunch of money. But life goes on. But as you would have it, second stream of news was worse than the first. Just notified that this person made all this money wasn't because he struck gold, wasn't because he became a new genius and somehow discovered a hidden talent. Simple. He stole the money from a bunch of people that he made them a bunch of false promises and took a bunch of other people that were just like him down with him. A bunch of other people that wanted to get rich quick. They didn't want to work for it. They didn't want to do what they're supposed to do for it. They wanted the easy way. They wanted to be Robin Hoods. In the beginning, the guy went from making $100,000 a year to making $2 million. Thinks he's on top of the world. Thinks he's Tony Montana. Thinks the world is yours. Starts running the show. Fancy car, fancy house, fancy watch, fancy vacation, fancy this, fancy that. It went from being a conceited to being like a little mini God. In a second, God took everything away. 1 second. You become nothing. Worse than what you started. Thought no one's going to catch you. No one's going to know. Everyone is stupid. And that's actually what he wrote. He thought everybody's stupid. That's what all of them write. They think everyone's stupid. You're right. A lot of people are stupid. But God isn't. God is not stupid. He sees everything. And the time will come where whatever you did, whether you stole $1 or $1 million, you touched one girl or two, you went this way or that way, if you violate any of his laws, the time will come and your skull will go down the hill, engraved on it this time and another. And a person that denies it is simply living an illusion and will bring themselves suffering as a result. Now, one of the things that people don't realize is that you don't have to murder anyone in order to be evil according to God. You don't have to worship an idol in order to be evil according to God. You don't. In fact, a Gentile who slays any soul, even a fetus in his mother's womb, should be executed in retribution for its death. Anyone that's had an abortion, whether you are the male that caused the girl to have it or you are the girl that had it, according to God, you're evil. The Rambam continues, Halakha number 5. There are 6 types of illicit sexual relations forbidden to a Gentile: his mother, his father's wife, a married woman, a maternal sister, a male with a male, and an animal. In so many words, while the first 1 or 2 usually don't apply to most people, number 3 and number 5 unfortunately have become the new trend in the world today. One young guy just said recently that he got fired from a law firm. I asked him, why'd you get fired? He said, when I was in my internship, or whatever it's called when you first start going into a law firm, one of the senior partners, a female, approached him. She wanted to have a relationship with him, and he wasn't interested. And he made the mistake of not only telling her no, but also telling some of the other fellow employees about it. He got fired a week later. Now, in reality, he could sue the law firm, but he didn't. In reality, he didn't even think there was anything wrong with the fact that this was even happening. He just wasn't interested. In reality, the fact that she was married didn't matter. He just wasn't interested. In reality, many times, people care less about whether the person that they want to make a sin with are married or not married. They just want to fulfill their craving. Like an animal, like a lion, like a zebra, like a horse. And there lies the ultimate problem for the generation. When a person thinks of things based on their own perspective, it's no surprise that they think that they're righteous, because they've defined righteous according to themselves. Whatever they do must be right, because they're doing it. No one views themselves as evil as long as the definition of evil is defined by them. The problem people have is when they start looking at the definition of evil according to their creator, who created them and the definition of evil. When a person starts to look at that definition, it's very, very, very easy to figure out where we stand, whether we are evil or not. Now, if a Gentile commits adultery, but without knowledge, meaning he doesn't know that it's a married woman, the death penalty is not applied because it's a mistake. Still, promiscuity is not exactly a good trait to have, regardless of whether you're a Jew or Gentile, but there's obviously a lot of details in each and every single law of how it's applied at the time of the Sanhedrin, at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. The point being is that we're not talking about the mistakes. We're not talking about the, things that could be looked at in different ways. We're talking about things that are simply, bottom line, this is what it is. There's no other way of looking at it. This is murder. There's no other way of looking at it. This is rape, and there's no other way of looking at it. This is pedophilia. There's no, all these different things. We have to look at it as the simple way. You plant a statue, that's idolatry. There's no other way to look at it. You're intentionally trying to steal your friend's wife, your friend's husband, that's adultery. There's no other way of looking at it. There's no other way of looking at it. You're a male and you are trying to marry another male, that's homosexuality. There's no other way of looking at it. That's what it is. And God defined all of those as violations of the 7 Noahide laws, and thereby being evil. So now, you ask yourself, where do I stand? You should have the answer. You no longer need to ask, what did the Jewish people think of me? Because it doesn't matter what they think of you. It doesn't matter what they think of you. It matters what God thinks of you. Because if you have a problem with God, certainly there's no greater problem than that. Now the Jewish people, I'll give you a little bit of a hint of what they think, since I happen to be one of them. We have different laws that are much, much more significant than the Noahide laws. We have 13 principles of faith, which are fundamental beliefs that every Jew must believe, or else they're considered a heretic. or else they're considered equivalent to an idol worshiper, like someone that prayed to a statue. Now, the 13 principles of faith are as follows. 1. God is the perfect creator and the cause of all created things. He alone made, makes, and will make all that is created. This is a fundamental belief in Judaism, to such an extent that you have to believe it. If you don't believe that God is the perfect creator, you think that there is any flaw in him or his creation, you, my dear friend, are an enemy of God. Now, if you think that somebody else made something, same. 2, God is one, absolute and unparalleled unity. There is no other God, there is no middleman, there is no partner, there's just God. 3, God has no body nor the likeness of an image. If you think that God has somehow become a human, or he has 3 parts, you are serving an idol, not God. 4, he exists above all concepts of time and is the first and is the last. There is no before him, there is no after him. 5, it's forbidden to worship anything other than him. If you are praying to a person, even if it's a holy person, if you're praying to a thing, if you're praying to an idea, you are serving an idol. 6, all words of the prophets in the Torah are true. That means that every single word in the 24 books of the Tanakh, every part of it is true. Whether you understand it or not is irrelevant. Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest of all prophets. That means that there is no other prophet greater than him. Not before him, not after him, even including Mashiach. God gave the whole Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the same Torah that we possess today. So all of those Muslims that believe that the Torah changed, or the Christians that believe that it's no longer relevant, or the Jews that think that you have to modernize the Torah because it's old, all of them are violating this law. The Torah of Moshe will never be nullified, nor will it ever come under, nor will there ever be another Torah aside for this. Now you're going to ask, wait a minute, but how is this Torah still going to be relevant when it's talking about Noach and the destruction of the world after Mashiach comes? How is the Torah going to be still relevant of bringing the sin offering now when we don't have a Bet HaMikdash, or after the Mashiach comes and there's no more sins? The details of how and what and when, that's all in the teachings of the sages, and some of the answers are, we'll find out when it happens. Point being is, this Torah never changes. Everything that's in it was relevant, is relevant, will be relevant at all times. 10. God knows the deeds and thoughts of man. When you think anything, good or bad, God knows what you're thinking at real time. He doesn't have to type on a computer to figure out what Steve is thinking about at this point. He doesn't have to ask one of the angels, can you go look into Steve and see what him and his girlfriend are thinking right now? He doesn't have to do that. Real time. He knows exactly what you're thinking right this second, and at all times. To comprehend that is impossible for a human being, or for anyone else, aside from God himself. But needless to say, that's the reality. What that means, that if you think of idolatry, God knows, and he punishes you for it. Idolatry is a sin even if it's in thought, but not just if you thought that idolatry exists, but rather if you think that idolatry actually has any real power, that it's worth worshiping it, that you want to worship it, that you are worshiping it. That in itself is a sin. It's the only sin that is in thought, is punishable even for a thought. 11. God grants a generous reward for those who observe the mitzvot in the Torah and punishes those who transgress its prohibitions. Meaning, if you do the will of God, you follow the good path, you'll be rewarded. But the reward is not just little small rewards of $1 million here and 10 million there and a car here and a wife here and a husband there and kids. Those are all small rewards in comparison to the eternal reward that comes after this life. And the same thing with the punishment. You lost money here, you lost money there, you got sick here, you got sick there. That's small punishment in comparison to the real punishment that's waiting for anyone that stays a sinner. 12. You must believe in the Messianic era and that the Mashiach will come. Mashiach coming is inevitable. People that thought he came are mistaken. Unfortunately, they've turned it into another form of idolatry. When Mashiach comes, everyone will know. There will not be any disagreement about it. Like all of the false messiahs that have existed throughout the last few thousand years. Whether it's Yoshke or Shabtai Tzvi or Yaakov Frank or any of the other false messiahs that have existed, every single one of them had one common denominator, which was a dispute in believing whether that person was Messiah or not. The one thing that everyone will know, including the enemies of the Mashiach, is that he is Mashiach. Meaning even the enemies of Mashiach will know he's Mashiach. No one will say he's not Mashiach. But they're still going to fight against him. 13. We must believe in the future resurrection of the dead. Why must you believe in the future resurrection of the dead? Simple. To understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't just create everything from nothing once, but can do it again and does whatever he wants to do with creation, including turning a bone into a living human being with flesh and blood. Now, these are some of the beliefs of the Jewish people. How are they applied in real life when it has to do with Goyim? You see, the Parashat Kedoshim that we read this week talks about all of the prohibitions against immorality. How it's forbidden to waste seed, forbidden to commit incest, forbidden to be LGBTQ, forbidden to marry an animal, a sister, and all types of other things. But also talks about the importance of the laws of Yichud. Yichud means that you're not allowed to be in an enclosed area with the opposite gender, because you're not allowed to put yourself at risk. And there are certain laws that you need to know. Laws that will apply to you while you're working, while you have customers, you have company, you have family over, whatever it is. You need to know who you're allowed to be alone with, who you're not allowed to be alone with. There's certain people there's no problem of you being alone with. It's your mother, it's your sister. It's not a problem. It's your brother, whatever it is. But there are certain people that you have to be much more careful with. Now, if a person is not careful, they have a problem. Why? Torah defines them as parutz. What's parutz? The Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, page 81a, brings a story of Rav and Rav Yehudah that I told you guys about 3 weeks ago. Rav and Rav Yehudah are walking in the streets nearly 2,000 years ago. And all of a sudden a woman passes them and walks in front of them. Immediately Rav tells Rav Yehudah, Yalla, pick up your feet from this Gehinnom. Meaning, hurry up quickly. And pass this woman, let's pass her and run, so we don't stay here and make sins. And end up going to Gehinnom. So Rav Yehudah says to him, but didn't you say that people that are, people that are kosher people don't have to worry about yichud with the woman? Only people that are prutzim, meaning people that are promiscuous, have this. He says, how can you trust yourself so much to assume that you're one of the holy people that's not going to sin? Meaning, even though you are a sage, you're holy, you're kadosh, you're amazing, there's no permission in the world for you to trust yourself to just be in a risk of sinning. Even though you are righteous, even though you are good, even though there's no reason for us to think that you will violate the law. But who says that you're allowed to trust yourself and just walk into wherever you want to walk into and look at whatever you want to look into? So who is a parutz? The Shevet Levi in volume 5. Perek 202, halacha number 1. Says, Prutzim is referring to people who lack particular cautiousness in maintaining a distance between genders. A Jew who's religious, who upholds the Torah and the mitzvot, is not suspected of doing avirot, and doing sins, and is usually considered kosher. But just because he's religious and keeps Shabbat and keeps kosher doesn't automatically make him kosher. Meaning he could be religious and still be considered parutz. Anyone who transgresses the prohibition of yichud is considered parutz. If he hangs out with girls, if she hangs out with guys on a regular basis, she's alone with them, he's alone with them, they're considered parutz. Even if they don't actually commit the act itself, per se, it's still considered parutz according to halacha. And a person who is not entirely careful in upholding the halachot of shmirat negiah, krivat ha'arayot, is considered parutz. In fact, the poskim clarify that a parutz doesn't necessarily have to be a Gentile or an irreligious Jew or mechalel Shabbat. It could even be someone that actually upholds the Torah and mitzvot, but does not act appropriately when it comes to the opposite gender. Like he's a religious singer, but he likes to have all types of flirtatious relationships with his fans. He's a religious, he has a wife, he has kids, but he likes to tell his fans that are females that they look good today. He's a parutz. A person who doesn't guard his eyes from immorality, watches television, watches movies that are inappropriate, reads and looks at inappropriate newspapers, is considered parutz. Now, all of this is common sense. What most people don't realize is that all non-Jews and all irreligious Jews, including tinokot shenishbu, meaning people that don't even realize what Judaism is, but they happen to be Jewish, they're all considered by default parutz. Dvar Halacha, chapter 9, Halacha number 4, Shevet Levi, volume 5, as I said, section 202, or Perek 202, Halacha number 1. All non-Jews and Jews, they're not religious, are treated the same. They're considered paruts. Why? Why are all non-Jews considered paruts? You say that's racism, that's thisism, and that's thatism. No. It's not just for the non-Jews. It's also for the Jews that are not religious. They're also considered paruts. This and this equal. Both goyim. And both considered paruts. This nation and that nation. This goyim of non-Jews, this goyim of Jews. They're both goyim. And they're both considered paruts. Why are they both considered paruts? Because without the Torah and the laws that it says that you have to uphold these laws of morality, there is no common sense law that would tell you to be reserved, to be modest, to not cheat, to not commit adultery. There is no other logical reason for you to not be a parutz. You see, Rabotai Karim, if a person does not observe the Torah as priority number one in their life, all they have left is pritzut, is immorality that they hold dear, because that is becomes their number one motivation. They want to make a lot of money so they can get the pretty girl, and then another girl, and then another girl. They want to get a position of power so they can get the girl. They want to get this so they can get the girl. It's all about the girl. It's all about more immorality. And what ends up happening is that without them even realizing it, they start functioning in life based on immorality. And the lines of morality get crossed so often to the point that even what they used to think is evil themselves, they start thinking that it may not be so evil when it comes to them. This is what explains all of these people that you see when they first became successful celebrities or businessmen or rappers or whatever they were. More or less, they had a dream. They had a dream of making money and having a girl and having this and all types of, generally speaking, normal possessions. Normal stuff that everybody else would want. But as they became more and more successful and had more and more possessions and more of their desires fulfilled, they became bored of eating steak every day. They became bored of being married to one woman every day. They became bored of all of the things that used to be their dreams. And they started desiring things that were more taboo. Even though in the past, they would tell you that that's evil. But in the present, they've redefined evil. They've redefined it. So you see, Rabotai, when a person does not uphold the Torah values and the Torah laws as priority number one, by default, the Jewish world has to view them as a parutz. Not because they dislike him, not because they dislike her, has nothing to do with that. But rather because if you don't have the Torah values as your values, then there's nothing that's stopping you from cheating on your husband or causing her husband to cheat on her. There's nothing to stop you from doing all of these different things that the Torah says it's forbidden. Because it's only the Torah that says this is forbidden. Society celebrates it. Society loves it. Society has turned that into the new good. And that's what the Zohar Kadosh says was the deciding factor of why God decided to destroy the world at the time of Noach. It wasn't that promiscuity just appeared for the first time then. It wasn't that homosexuality just appeared for the first time back then. All of these things have been around. The same thing with Sodom and Gomorrah. It wasn't the first time or the last time. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to destroy them after they've determined to redefine good. When they redefined good and they said that evil is good, that what God views as evil is what they define as good, that's when God says they've lost their right to exist. So now, Rabotai, each and every single one of us knows a few things that could easily change the course of their life. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, I'm sure that before you heard all of this, you assumed you were good. And you may very well be good in many things and in many ways. But it doesn't matter what you or I think. What matters most is what God thinks, what God decrees. He told us this is the difference between good and evil. While many people worship idols, many people don't. While many people murder, most people don't. While many people steal, most people don't plan to. The one major issue that is a common denominator in more things than anything else is the morality. But either way, even if your morality is, you have a check next to it, you still have to check the stealing and how you conduct your business. You still have to check your ideology and how you believe in one God. You still have to check all of the other things. Because once you have a check mark next to all of them, just make sure you keep going. Keep going in that route. But if you don't have a check mark next to one of them, if you don't have a check mark next to two of them, if you don't have a check mark next to three of them, then now you know what God thinks of you. But you also need to know that you're still alive because He wants you to change before it's too late. BeEzrat HaShem, this helps all of us change sooner rather than later. B'cha b'atzlacha. Again, for any of you that want to watch more lectures, you can go to our YouTube channel, or you can go to our website, bhtorah.org, or beezrathashem.org. You could donate over there as well. And anyone that wants to sponsor the new series that will start BeEzrat HaShem on Tuesday night, you could contact us, and BeEzrat HaShem, we will succeed together. Call to B'cha b'atzlacha, and we'll learn again later this week. Of Rabbi Eliezer ben Holkanos asked him, what can we do to protect ourselves from Chavrei Mashiach? He says, Torah and Gemilut Chasadim. Even if somebody does a nice thing or learns a lot or anything like that, it's never compared to bringing one of Hashem's lost kids that's been lost for the last 3,000 years back home. One of the beautiful things that we have in our organization is that we have both Torah and Zikuy Rabim, because we have our kollels, we have our avrechim, and we also have our kiruv that we do around the world. Our lectures reach every corner of the world, Baruch Hashem, in multiple languages, but of course, we always want to do even more.
תות היו רגלינו בשערייך ירושלים למעמד הנשגב והמרומם של סיום הש"ס, זוהר והשולחן ערוך, שעל ידי ארגון בעזרת השם העולמי
יכול להיות שעכשיו אנחנו נשמע את השופר של המשיח.
נמצא איתנו כאן האורח מפלורידה, יושב ראש הארגון מזכה הרבים, הרב ירון ראובן.
בעזרת השם כולנו נעשה ונצליח ונגדל בתורה ונזכה את הרבים ונעשה כבוד שמיים כמו שצריך.
אתם עמלי התורה, תמשיכו, תהיו אור גדול.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
הזדמנות שאני מברך את הרב ירון ראובן שהוא זכה את הרבים ומחזיק תורה בעם ישראל בארץ וגם בתפוצות. אשריו והשחקו, שממשיך עוד לעשות כאלה וכאלה. זכות גדולה מאוד שהוא מחזיק תורה בעם ישראל.
טוב, ש"סים נוספו הערב לעם ישראל לכבודה של תורה, להרמת קרנה של תורה, וכל הדברים הללו ברוך השם הודות לידידנו יושב ראש הארגון שעוד לא ידע את ההפתעה שתכננתי לו.
While we have queue of work that we've done throughout the whole year, we also have the Torah that we're constantly producing more and more of, and last but not least, the chesed to feed the poor people in Israel.
A very special thank you to all our amazing guests who show real Ahavat Israel by taking the time out of their busy schedule and sharing their ups and downs with us, all for the sake of Am Yisrael.
ארגון בעזרת השם הולך לחלק מאות סלי מזון בכל רחבי הארץ.
One of the big things that we have, aside from this campaign, you probably see this poster or something similar to it, is also we published some of the recent results that we have, or at least up to now, of the organization. And one of the reasons why we do this each year is because we want to make sure that our partners, our donors, our Talmidim know where their money is going. Unlike everybody else that, says a lot, does a lot, we want to show you what these results are. I can tell you from my experience and a little bit of knowledge about the whole Torah world, I don't know of anybody else, any other organization on planet Earth that produces dollar for dollar what we've produced over these last few years. This is nothing to be arrogant about. It's simply Siyata Bishmaya, Kadosh Baruch Hu helped us. We made every sacrifice that we can possibly make in order to make it happen. Producing nearly 300 films, publishing 32 books, our own books, giving out 154,000 books for free. Giving out 154,000 books is not a cheap endeavor. Anyone that wants to do such a thing has to be completely committed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to his children, and most importantly, to have bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his Torah. We also have fed over 160,000 people over these last several years. Each year, during Pesach, the high holidays, throughout the year, we help a lot of people eat, help make sure that they have groceries, food, all types of things. And you guys have seen many of the videos that we've produced over the years to actually show you the people that are getting this food. You have here 160,000 people have eaten, nearly 300 Torah films. And then on top of all of it, we have 1.4 million USB, CDs, and cards that have been giving out for free. All of the work that we've done over the last 10 years on these USBs given out for free. Last but not least, 12,000 video and audio lectures available online in about 14 different languages for the world to watch for free.
הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, נשאר גבוה בעזרת השם, שעלו מעלה, גדל ברכה והצלחה. זאת מוכרים מלא משאלות דיבה, בתורה ובברכה. וכל אשר יפנו, תשכילו ויצליחו. תזכרו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, ותהיו תורה להגדרה בין והבין.
ארגון בעזרת השם לקח על עצמו את אחת המטרות הקשות ביותר בדור שלנו, לתקן עולם במלכות שדי. לא להסתפק במשהו אחד, לעזור רק לאנשים מסכנים, רק לאנשים ניצולי שואה, רק לאנשים שלא מכירים את אלוקים, רק לאנשים שאין להם כלום בבית, אלא לעזור לכלל ישראל בכל מכל. וברוך השם, חפץ השם בידינו הצליח. למעלה ממיליון יהודים ויהודיות נעזרו על ידי ארגון בעזרת השם. רק תדמיינו לכם איזה עוצמה היה לכל אחד ואחת מהשותפים שזכו להיות כל אחד כפי כוחו ויכולתו, לאיזה תוצאות הצליחו להגיע ולאיזה תוצאות עוד יצליחו.
פורים שמח על לראות את השלטים, נעלה עכשיו למעלה, תנועה קצת, את האש, את הלימוד. ברוכים הבאים, אפשר לראות כאן כולם יושבים לומדים, איזה רעש של תורה, איזה רעש, והנה יש פה עוד בית מדרש, וגם פה יש, השם הכל עמוס. פורים שמח.
הדמיון הזה הוא לא דמיון כל כך רחוק, כי כמו שהתורה אומרת, בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו, ככה גם בדבר הזה. כל מי שירצה, כל מי שרוצה או רוצה להיות שותפים איתנו, עם הארגון הקדוש והנפלא הזה, שכל כוונתו לשם שמיים, להגדיל תורה ולהאדירה, להרים קרן התורה, לעזור לכל אחד ואחד מעם ישראל, בכל העניינים, כל המישורים, מהילד הכי קטן שצריך מטרנה וטיטולים, עד האיש הכי מבוגר שלעולם לא הניח תפילין, ורגע לפני המוות דואגים להניח לו תפילין. אם גם אתם רוצים להיות שותפים בכאלה דברים גדולים בעשייה של תורה ועבודה וגמילות חסדים, ברוך השם, ארגון בעזרת השם כאן לצדכם, לשירותכם, יחד עם כלל ישראל.
כמעט 1.5 מיליון דיסקים, דיסקונקים שחילקנו, כל הדברים האלה בחינם, יותר מ-12,000 שיעורים. אז כל הדברים האלה, מתי שבן אדם רואה כמה ההשקעה שלו, אם זה בבתים, מניות, בכל מיני דברים, והוא רואה שהמניה עלתה 10% במקום אחד ו1,000% במקום שני, אז הוא מבין איפה להשקיע פעם הבאה. ואותו דבר פה, יש הרבה אנשים שברוך השם צופים את השיעורים שלנו, שיעורים של הרב אפרים, שיעורים של הרב שרביט ושאר הרבנים בארגון, ועכשיו זה הזמן להיות שותפים בדבר הגדול שאנחנו עושים ברוך השם.
After somebody dies, their neshama naturally feels like it needs to be cleaned and like it needs to go to Gehinnom to go and clean itself so it could feel better after.
And one of the reasons why we do this, why we show these numbers, is because we want to show everyone what we've done to give you an indication of what we can do in the future. So this is the time where we need as much of your help as possible to push yourself more than you typically do. If you typically donate a couple $100, donate 1,000. If you could afford the 8,000, 15,000, 50,000, whatever you could afford, this is the time to do it, because this is going to be the help that we have to help all of these avrachim, to feed these people, and perhaps BeEzrat Hashem one day to get that building that we've been wanting to build here in the United States, to build a community. But all of these things require millions of dollars. If not now, then when?